I'm told we have our Mark Rosenker on the phone right now. We heard Mark Waters there talking about the FAA, and I'm wondering, Mark, if you are with us, tell us about what happens in a situation like this. Alan said this is a plane that's chartered by Eastern Airlines, it's 737-700 series. What's next now? What happens in a case like this?
Well, given the fact that the high visibility of the passenger on board and the campaign staff, the NTSB is going to, I suspect, show significant interest in this particular incident. The FAA, along with the NTSB, will be doing the investigation with the NTSB in the lead. They'll be pulling down the cockpit voice recorder. They'll be looking at the flight data recorder. They'll take out the air traffic control tapes. All of those things will be taken to Washington so that they can do the readout and the analysis. They'll be looking at the aircraft itself to make sure there were no anomalies, and they'll be interviewing the crew, the pilot, the co-pilot, and, of course, the flight crew. The good news is no one seems to have any injuries, and that's excellent. But they'll be documenting the scene to make sure they understand exactly what happened here, and the investigation will go forth. But it's again, because thank goodness, either due to airmanship or due to just some very good luck, although they skidded off the runway, nothing else happened.
Mark, based on your experience as a former head of the NTSB, is anything different in an investigation like this because this happens to be a charter flight?
Oh, absolutely not. This is the NTSB is required to take a look at all accidents, aviation accidents within the United States. This is an incident that needs to be looked at very carefully. I'm reminded when I was still the chairman of the NTSB back in 08 and 09 during the actual campaign, President Obama's charter plane actually had an incident while it was in the air of one of the slides imploding in the tail of the aircraft, which was giving some problems to the ability to control the airplane. The pilots were able to land and everything was fine. But there were some moments where there was some concern, and of course we wanted to take a look at why that happened on board that aircraft.
I wonder, Mark, in a situation like this, because you have this candidate, obviously he's got a lot on his schedule, is this an instance where, as these officials begin their work, they would need to interview the governor? They would want to try and set up a time? Is that a possibility? Is that something that they would be interested in doing?
No, I think, again, the governor's a passenger on board the aircraft. Right. This was an incident. They're more interested in taking interest in the pilot, the co-pilot. They'll be looking at the records. They'll be looking at the maintenance records. They'll be taking a look at any type of weather factors that could have contributed to this situation. So there's lots of things that they're going to be looking at, but clearly the passengers were just along for the ride in this case.
And tell us about these conditions that we're seeing. And, you know, Alan was mentioning that they had experienced some turbulence as they were approaching LaGuardia. We heard Alan say that it's raining right now at LaGuardia. But, you know, we didn't see any kind of severe weather reports tonight. What do you make of that? I know we obviously have just had this happen, so it's difficult to make any kind of conclusion. But how would you characterize these conditions?
Well, once again, we're very early in the investigative process. Clearly, weather conditions are going to be looked at very carefully. They're going to be seeing if there were any PIREPs, which means pilot reports indicating that they had turbulence or unusual conditions as they approached the runway. So lots of things are going to be having to be examined before they have any idea of what potentially created this incident.
And Mark, how long would you expect this investigation to take?
Given the fact that we have an incident occurring, it wouldn't surprise me we're dealing in months rather than the typical in a major accident, what we call a major investigation. I would think that they're able to give some fairly definitive answers within a series of months.
And Mark, we know that the city of New York sent out a text alert a short time ago that because of this incident, LaGuardia is closed. I'm getting some new information right now. Go ahead and talk to me, control room. Okay, all right. So we have, I'm told that, so LaGuardia is currently closed until further notice. Check with your airline for info is what this text from the city of New York is saying. As we continue to watch these pictures out of LaGuardia, which include, we see a shot there of the governor himself, Governor Pence. Tell us what that protocol is. Is that's typical in a situation like this for the entire airport to shut down?
Depending upon what the weather conditions are, depending upon where this aircraft is on the runway, where it could cause interference with other flights, they've made a prudent decision to begin sending aircraft to other airports.
And so, as we continue to await more information, what kind of effect could this closure then have? What kind of ripple effect could that have at this time?
It's going to absolutely. When you close a major airport like LaGuardia, you're going to have a ripple effect, both in takeoffs and departures. So they'll have to be working with the various airlines to make these kinds of decisions to get the system back up as soon as they're able to safely remove that aircraft from the runway, and then, of course, move on to where they're able to bring the aircraft in and out of LaGuardia in a safe and efficient manner.
I would imagine that could cause these airlines. It'd be a bit of a challenge for them to try and figure out. LaGuardia is such a busy airport, but I would imagine that there are some challenges involved in doing that.
Absolutely, but they're used to doing it. They've done it for weather. They do it for incidents. They do it for accidents. This is something which, in fact, they deal with. They have plans. They have concepts of operations that, in fact, enable them to make the alternative plans for diversion.
Mark, one thing that Alan had said to us is that on that plane, it was not uncommon to have very hard landings. In fact, I don't know if you heard him say before, as they were landing earlier today in Fort Dodge, Iowa, they had such a hard landing. He said that there was actually laughter. They laughed it off. But it was a very, very hard landing. Is that something that what could that be a function of? I suppose anything, but this plane, the 737-700 series, is there anything about that plane that would make that kind of experience common?
No, absolutely not. That's a very safe aircraft. The 737 is the backbone of the industry in the United States, along with Airbus as well. These are very safe, very efficient aircraft. We're flying thousands of them every day. Now, again, they may have had some weather conditions which created an environment where a hard landing was done. But again, the NTSB, they've got a copy. They'll have a copy of the flight data recorder, which takes 25 hours of the history of the airplane. They, depending upon the cockpit voice recorder, it could be 2 hours. It could be a little longer. So we don't know how long that flight was from Iowa to New York. So we won't know what happened there. But they'll be interviewing the crew. There's lots of data that's going to be available to the investigators to see if there was any anomaly with this aircraft.
All right, Mark Rosenker, former NTSB chair, thank you so much.